Hello, this is Susan Poss. This is still section 2.5, solving equations. This is my third video, so I've numbered it 2.5.3. These contain parentheses. So each time that I'm doing a video here, we're doing a little something different. So I hope you remember your distributive property. So I'm going to distribute over that parentheses 2z plus 2. Keep the equals mark where it is on that, along that straight line, and then just copy down the right hand side because there's no work yet to do over there. Subtracting 3z from both sides in order to get the variable terms together. And then subtracting 2 from both sides in order to get the constant terms together. Now, are we done? No, we're not done. So when you end up with a negative in front of the variable, you don't stop because technically what you have there is a -1. Remember, we said we would always divide by the coefficient. I don't like the way that looks. We always would divide by the coefficient in front of the variable term when we get it down to this last step. So I'm dividing each side by -1. Notice I don't divide by z there. A lot of times students want to divide by the variable. You only divide by the numerical coefficient. And so you see that the two -1s divide to give me a +1 in front of the z, and then my solution is -1. All right, let's come down here and try one that's a little more complicated. Still has parentheses. I'm still making sure I separate left from right with my little dotted line to help me out here. All right, so there is a temptation on this one to start out with 5 subtract 3 is 2. But remember the order of operations. The multiplication has priority over that subtraction of 3 from 5. So you're going to see me first off just writing down the 5 and then distributing the 3 into the parentheses. Same thing here, distributing the 4 into the parentheses. Notice nothing happens to the 5. It just sits out there in front, and nothing happens to the 6. It just trails out there on the end. All right, so now I have some work to do. On the left-hand side, just look at the left-hand side for a minute. Right here. I see two like terms on the left-hand side. So when you see that, it's to your advantage to go ahead and compress those two terms into a single term. So what I just did there was 5 added to -3 is not -2, I just made a mistake, is +2. Glad I caught that. You may see me make mistakes in some of these videos. It's just me not paying attention, but I'm trying. All right, so the same thing over here. I notice -20 and +6 can be combined, and you definitely want to do that. You see how that compresses and shortens the equations. It doesn't have 6 terms anymore, it only has 4 terms. So now you can start moving things around. I'm going to subtract the 4x from both sides. It gives me -10x. Keep everything in line. Subtract the 2 from both sides. All right, so the last move we talked about earlier, you always want to divide by whatever that numerical coefficient is on the variable. Let me go ahead and write that down. So I'm going to be dividing here by -10 on both sides to maintain that balance. That, of course, is going to give me a +1 in front of the variable x. Here's my equals mark. Negative divided by negative is going to give me a positive result, and 16 over 10 will reduce down to 8 over 5. And you definitely want to leave that in fraction form. You don't want to try to convert that to a decimal or anything unless it's a word problem and you might want it in decimal form. But generally you want to leave these things in their exact fraction form. All right, let's see. I think there was something I wanted to say about this one. I was trying to see if I could shorten this a little bit. I'll just work a little bit. I may not work all of this one. The thing I wanted to call your attention to here is this negative in front of that parentheses. Again, think of that as a -1 multiplier, so that as I come in here, whoops, that's not right. As I come in here and distribute, I'll be distributing this -1 over the parentheses. So let's see how that looks. Copy down the 8, distribute the 4 to the 2x, distribute the 4 to the -3, keep the equal in line, copy down the 5, distribute the -1 to the x, so -1 times x is -1x, and -1 times 3 is -3. So there we've got the distribution part finished. And this is just like the previous one now. I see some like terms on both sides that can be combined in order to compress this. I'll try not to make a sign error that time. And then I'll start moving things around. So I'm going to add x to both sides. And of course you can start skipping steps. After you've done a lot of these, you don't need to write everything down. I'm writing things down so you can follow where it's coming from. And the last step here, of course, I'll do this quickly, is to divide by this, divide by that coefficient 9 in front of the variable x. And finishing up, this fraction is going to need to be reduced. So let's reduce it down using a 3 to 2/3. And again, just leave it in fraction form. So I did want to work this one that's got fractions in it quickly for you. And again, I don't know which way is the best way to do this. There are a couple of ways to proceed. I'll try this. I'm just going to distribute first. And then we can talk about clearing fractions. So 1/4 times x and 1/4 times 4. If you're not familiar with this and fractions give you a headache, you can do that on your calculator. If you need help with that, I've got a video in here somewhere that talks about how to use your calculator, work with fractions. If yours is a different brand of calculator, and you're in my class, you can just email me and I'll try to send you instructions for that. All right, so I've done the distribution part. I'm noticing here this 3 and this -1. I can shorten by combining. And I'm going to use, I think the best way to go, again, is this LCD route. Notice the denominators are 4 and 5, so the LCD is 20. And let me see if I can be quick about this. So this is the step where I'm coming through multiplying by the LCD in order to clear out the fractions so that all these denominators are going to cancel out. So 4 into 20, denominators are 1. No cancellation there. 5 into 20 and 5 into 20. So again, this is where it gets a little messy. I see a 5x here. I see 40 there. I see 16 here. and I see 24x, and notice how I have successfully cleared the fractions. Wow, this one's gotten very long. I'm going to have to try to squeeze my work up here a little bit. So let's do minus 24x and that's going to give me, what is that, negative 19x plus 40 equals 16. I'm going here. Recopy it. And the next thing you're going to see me do is subtract 40 from both sides. And I got to get my arithmetic right. I think that's negative 24. Hope that's right. And then finally, quickly divide by this negative 19, the numerical coefficient. So I'll end up with a negative 24 divided by a negative 19. And remember that negative divided by negative is positive, and I don't believe I can reduce that, so that's where I would stop with 24 over 19.